भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Namaste, my dear friends. This is video number 34 on Viveka Chudamani of Adi Sankaracharya. This video starts with stanza number 553. Similarly, the man of perfection remains unaffected with all that happens to his body, mind, intellect, ever established in the experience of the self. In short, he too has prarabdha, but he is not involved in it. Stanza 553. नैव इंद्रियाणि विश्वेषु नियुक्तम् ऐसे नैव युक्तम् उपदर्शन लक्षणस्थ नैव क्रियाफल दक्षपते सब आनंद इंद्रिय रस पान सुमत चित्त है. He does not direct the sense organs to their objects, nor does he detach them from these, but he remains like an indifferent onlooker. His mind being drunk with wine of bliss of the self, he holds not the least regard for the fruits of action. The attitude of the man of perfection in his transactions with the world is indicated in this verse. He is never at pains to guide his sense organs into sense indulgences. Ordinarily, you and I run after sense objects. Objects are around the man of perfection also. Neither does he run after them, nor does he deliberately take himself away from them. He is not affected either way. If you are sleeping, you are not consciously responsible for kicking or not kicking the fellow by your side, because when asleep you are not in the equipment at all. You are on a different plane of consciousness altogether. The man who has gone into a higher plane of consciousness has no body at all. Yet you and I see the body of the master moving about. He stays in the body as an unconcerned onlooker. Upadarshana lakshanasta. The man of perfection has least concern for the fruits of action. We generally act because we want something or that we may get some joy out of the act. His dispassion towards joys arising from sense contacts is because he is full of the ecstatic joy of the self. He is full of the undiluted elixir of the bliss of the self. Stanza 554. Laksya lakshi gatim yuktva yastishte keval atmana shiv ev swam saksadayam brahm vidutam. He who has renounced the anxiety to reach the goal and never to deviate from it, and lives as the absolute Atma, indeed he is Shiva himself, the best among the knowers of Brahma. Having renounced the anxiety to reach the goal and the anxiety never to deviate from the goal. Lakshya alaksya gatim tyaktva. That is, I must move towards the self, I must not move towards the not self. I am slipping away from the goal, etc. In him there is no more this anxiety. The anxiety to reach the goal will leave when the goal is reached. Such an individual whose mind is free from all worry and dissipation is Lord Shiva himself, the very embodiment of auspiciousness. He who has thus reached this Shiva Pada is the best among the knowers of Brahma. Stanza number 555. जीवन नेव सदा मुक्त है कृतार्थो ब्रह्मवित्तम उपाधि नाश ब्रह्मैव सन ब्रह्मापेति निद्वयम्. The perfect knower of Brahma becomes eternally free even in this life and is fulfilled. He merges with the non-dual Brahma, which he had been all along through the destruction of his limitations. The man of perfection, even while living in the physical body, attains the infinitude, though he may be a PFT from the standpoint of others. He who attains thus is said to be fulfilled. Kritartha, having gained what is to be gained. In our bosoms there is always the sense of unfulfillment or discontent, but he is always content, ever fulfilled. There is nothing more to be gained by him at any level of personality. When the equipments are transcended, he becomes the non-dual Brahma. He does not experience the pluralistic phenomenal world. He does not find himself separate from Brahma. He experiences the entire significance of Taume Tavad, etc. Taume Vadat Tadvatmeva. Stanza number 556. Selvusho Veshadbhava Bhavyoscha Yatha Puman Tathaiva Brahm Vichester Sada Brahmaiva Napraha. Just as an actor, whether he wears the dress of his role or not, is always a man, so too the perfect knower of Brahma is always Brahma and nothing else. The actor, when on stage, is called king, soldier, hero, etc., according to the part he plays. When the makeup is removed, he is just an ordinary man, Mr. So and so. He was Mr. So and so even while he was playing his part on the stage. In both cases, with or without makeup, he is Mr. So and so. If a husband is playing the part of Duryodhana and mace in hand meets his wife near the green room, will his attitude towards her be that of Duryodhana? He will only be her husband. When the play is over, the makeup removed, and the mace changes hands, he is still her husband. Similarly, the best among the knowers of Brahma, who has realized the infinitude, is always Brahma, even while living in the world and playing his part on the stage of life. Never does he identify with the role of the flesh. Stanza number 557. Yatra kvapi visirnam satparanmyu tro vapuhu pattat brahmibhutasya yate pragev satchidanagnina dugdam. The body of a sannyasi who has realized Brahma may wither and fall anywhere like the leaf of a tree. It matters not, for it has already been burnt in the fire of knowledge. The tree is found to have no identification with the leaves that have fallen off. The man of perfection has as much identification with his body as a tree has with a fallen leaf. Even before a leaf falls off, it becomes useless to the tree, for it has already yellowed and dried up. It still clings to the tree because it has no energy to fall off. When the strong autumn breeze carries it away, the tree is not worried about it or its destiny, for long ago it had ceased to be of any use to it. Similarly, the man of perfection, even before realization, has burnt down his identification with the body in the fire kindled by knowledge. It is of no consequence if such a body, which no more serves any useful purpose, falls off. Good riddance of bad rubbish. Stanza number 558. सद आत्मनि ब्रह्मणि तिष्ठतो मुने पूर्ण दुआ आनंदमय आत्मना सदा न देश कालादु चित्त प्रतीक्षा व्यंगमाशा विट पिंड विसर्जनाय. The sage who is firmly established in the eternal reality Brahma as infinite non-dual bliss depends not on the usual consideration of place, time, etc. for giving up this bundle of skin, flesh, and filth. An individual who has a reflective mind and who remains in the experience of Brahma, the self everywhere enjoys unbroken bliss. Such an individual who has become one with Brahma even while living will not wait for an appropriate time and place for dying, leaving the body. He does not anticipate pratiksha, all these things. He does not depend upon the time, place, circumstances, etc. He has no problem like this bundle of flesh and facial matter packed in a sack of skin. Where should I throw? At what time should I throw it? Who should be the witnesses when I throw it? Etc. Really speaking, the decent thing to do is to throw away the filthy thing when nobody is looking your way. Stanza number 559. Desya moksho ne dandasya ne kamandalo avidya hridaya granthi moksho yatastah. For giving up the body or the staff or the water bowl is not liberation. Liberation is the sundering of the heart's knots which are constituted of ignorance. Liberation from the body is no liberation. If the destruction of the body is liberation, it would be easiest to employ a length of rope or to fling it into a river or under an oncoming train. Why struggle at all? Nature will one day take it away. To free oneself from the physical body is not liberation, for one will continue to exist in the subtle and causal bodies. The staff, danda and the water bowl, kamandalu are a sannyasin's accoutrements. These he throws away when he becomes a privrajka sannyasi. A privrajka is one who moves about from place to place. Liberation from the danda and kamandalu is not liberation. Just as by throwing away the physical body one does not become spiritual. True liberation consists of freedom from the knots of the heart, hridaya granthi, that is ignorance, avidya, desire, kama and action, karma. These three knots must be acute asunder, then it matters not whether one has a body and possessions or not. Stanza 560. Kulaya math nadyam vay शिव अक्षेत्रेऽपि चत्वरे पर्णं पतति चेतेन तरो किं नु शुभाशुभम्. If a leaf falls in a stream or a river in a place consecrated to Shiva or at a crossroad, what good or evil will it bestow upon the tree? The leaves of a tree fall off in autumn. One leaf may fall into a gutter, one into a river, one at a crossroad, a fourth into the Ganges, and yet another may fly, drift in breeze, and land in a Shiva temple. What has the tree got to do with them? Let the body fall down anywhere, whenever its prarabdha ends. If the people around want a little more satisfaction, let them burn it, else let it rot and stink. What have I got to do with it? Stanza 561. Patrasya puspasya falasya nasvadde indri pran dhyam vinashah नव आत्मनः स्वस्य सदा आत्मकस्या नंदा करते वृक्ष वदस्ति चेश. Like the destruction of a leaf, flower or fruit to a tree is the destruction of the body, sense organs, pranas and intellect. The Atma, the eternal reality, is never affected. It is the embodiment of bliss which is one's real nature and exists like the tree. When the leaf, the flower, and the fruit fall off, nothing happens to the tree. They are all its fulfillment, but the tree is separate from all these. Similar is the vinasa of the body, the sense organs, the vitality, and the intellect. When they all die and fall away, I still exist. Just as the tree survives after the fallen leaves, the fallen flowers, and the fallen fruits, the pure, eternal, infinite consciousness which knows no destruction survives the body and the intellect. Stanza number 562. Parjan Ghan Ityalakshane Satya Suchakam Anudyopadhikashaiv Katyanti Vinashanam. The embodiment of consciousness. In these words, the scriptures indicate the nature of the self, establish its reality, and voice the destruction of apparent conditionings only. Pragna Ghana is the word used by Yajnavalkya in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. He indicates the nature of reality by using this word. Pragna Ghana means a homogeneous mass of consciousness where there is nothing other than it. It points out the eternal reality that survives all destructions. It is that which was, is, and shall ever be Satyam. That reality is the self in the individual, which is the self in the whole universe. Pragna Ghana also indicates that infinite eternal reality which is all pervading within and without, which survives the destruction of all other things in the universe, consisting of names and forms, emotions and thoughts. The state of existence transcending all the equipments is pointed out as Pragnaghana. The vision of the world that we have today ends with the experience of the reality. Stanza number 563. अविनाशी वा अरे आत्मयेति श्रुति आत्मनः परविर्वृत्ति विनाशित्व विनष्टस्यु विकारिषु. immortal is this Atma, my dear. This passage from the scriptures speak of the immortal in the midst of things finite and subject to modification. In the same Upanishad, Yajnavalkya advises his wife Maitreyi by saying that which is indestructible, that immutable reality is the self, my dear. By so saying, the Upanishad indicates the immutability of the Atma. Destruction can only come to an unatman. In the midst of change, it is the changeless. It is the light of consciousness in which all changes take place. That consciousness has no involvement in the destruction. Stanza number 564. पाषाण विरक्ष तृण धान्य कन राद्या दग्धा पवंती ही मृदेव यथा तथैव देह इंद्रिय सुमन आदि समस्त दृश्यम ज्ञान अग्नि दग्ध पुपम याति परमात्म भावम. Just as stone, tree, straw, grain, husk, etc. are reduced to ashes when burnt, so too the whole objective universe comprising the body, sense organs, pranas, mind, etc. are reduced to the Supreme Self when burnt in the fire of knowledge. As long as it exists, a stone is a stone, a tree is a tree, a leaf is a leaf, etc. But when they are burned, they all become nothing but ashes. The tongue of fire scorches the name, the shape, the quality, etc. of whatever it licks. What is left is only ashes. Similarly, the whole world of objects, the body, sense organs, mind, etc., which are seen, felt, and thought of when inquired into, are found to be nothing but the self. If the entire world of perceptions, the kshetra, is burnt in the fire of understanding and awakening, Jnanagni Dagda Karmani, what remains is the self alone. When the identification with the BMI is burnt down, the OET are no more felt. When all this world consisting of names and forms is burnt in the fire of realization, the self alone remains. Stanza number 565. विलक्षणं यथा ध्वान्तं लीयते भानु तेजसि तथैव सकलं दृश्यं ब्रह्मणि परिलीयते. Just as darkness, which is distinctly different from sunlight, vanishes in the sun's effulgence, so too this entire objective universe vanishes into Brahma. This dissolution of the phenomenal world into the self is a unique experience. It cannot be explained. The world of perception, being the product of ignorance, tamas, must necessarily disappear at the rise of knowledge. In the fourth plane of consciousness, there will be no other experience than the pure infinite consciousness itself. Sadhaks who are not fully initiated might find it difficult to conceive this idea, as their intellect can never think of the state of existence where there are no names and forms. Usually, Vedantic teachers glide over this by saying the world of plurality gets merged in the state of pure awareness. What exactly is this merger? How does it take place? Such doubts are being answered here by an example. Before sunrise, there is massive darkness all around. grinning its horrors and frightening all weak minds. As the sun rises in the blazing light of the Lord of the day, the darkness gets completely wiped out. When one awakens from dream, the dream gets merged in the waker's mind. In the same way, ignorance, avidya, and its consequent misapprehensions, jagat, disappear in the effulgent light of infinite truth. Stanza 566. घटे नष्टे यथा व्योम व्योमैव भवति स्फुटं तथैवापाधि विलये ब्रह्मैव ब्रह्मवित् स्वयं. Just as when a pot is broken, the pot space becomes the limitless space, so too when the conditionings are destroyed, the knower of Brahma becomes Brahma itself. When the body, mind, and intellect are transcended, the knower of Brahma becomes Brahma, that is, what was till now an intellectual understanding becomes a direct subjective experience. Brahmavid Brahmaeva Brahmavati. When the dreamer is no more in the dream world objects can no more exist. When the subjective I in the dreamer rises above the dream mind and intellect, the dream world is no longer perceived. When the dreamer and dream world are ended, the individual awakes to a positive state of experience as the waker and naturally in the waking world. Following the same argument, if the waker awakes from the waking BMI, the waking OET are no more perceived by him, but he awakes not a non-existent nothingness, an empty vacuum, a stupid zero, but he becomes the pure infinite consciousness. When the dream ends, the dreamer becomes the waker, that is, becomes Brahma. Stanza number 567. Aksiram aksire yatha aksitam tailam taile jalam jale sanyukt tam yati tatha manya vinumni. Just as milk poured into milk, oil into oil, and water into water, each becomes united and one, so too he who has realized the Atma becomes one with Atma. In order to illustrate the subtle idea described in the previous verse, Sankara, the teacher, brings out yet another beautiful example. It is impossible for the human intellect to understand that at the moment of realization his entire separative egocentric sense will end and that he shall become the pure self. This unique experience gained on transcending the intellect is being communicated here with worldly examples for the struggling intellect of the student. Just as when oil is mixed with oil, they merge to become one homogeneous mass of oil. Similarly, the consciousness in the bosom, till now playing as an individual, when it transcends the BMI during moments of deepest contemplation and meditation, it merges with the self to become one with the self. So long as the dreamer lives the dream, the teacher in the dream can never make the dreamer understand that one awakening from the dream, the dreamer will become the waker. Stanza 568. एवं विदे केवलम सन्मात्रे अखंडितम ब्रह्मभावम परमेदेश्य व्यतिन वर्तते पुनः. He does not suffer transmigration having experienced seclusion as a result of being disembodied and becoming ever identified with the one reality Brahma. the state of oneness. Kevalah is called Kevalya. It is the state in which there are no distinctions of time, space, etc. Disembodiedness, some say, is phenomenal death, but according to Sankara, it is non-attachment with the body, gross, subtle, or causal. The non-dual condition, Kevalya, is pure, unbroken existence alone. Experience of Kaivalya is Brahma Bhava. Having attained this, the seeker never comes back into the realm of change. The individual who has lifted himself from his identification with the BMI and has realized Om never returns to the realm of bondage. Stanza 569. सदातं कयित्वा विज्ञानदग्धा विद्या वर्ष्मणे अमुष्य ब्रह्मभूतवाद ब्रह्मणे कुतः उद्भवः. By realizing the oneness of the Jiva and Brahma, his bodies grow subtle and causal, consisting of ignorance, etc., are burnt and he becomes Brahma itself. How can Brahma, the unborn, ever have rebirth? The apprehension of reality burns down the entire series of complications from avidya up to the gross body. The individual who has apprehended reality becomes Brahma. Having becomes Brahma, how can there be any more becoming for him? The birth of a thing is the destruction of its previous condition. Brahma is indestructible. How can it have birth? Now you may ask, but Swamiji, how was it first born? It never was. Then what am I now? Nothing, Maya. Then why should I struggle to realize? Don't struggle, just be it. If you think you are other than it, then struggle by all means. But we know that you are not, for you are nothing but Brahma alone. Verse number 570. माया कल्परतौ बंद मोक्षौ नेस्तै स्वात्मनि वस्तुतः यथा रज्जौ निष्क्रियायां सर्पाभास विनिर्गम्यो. Maya conjured up bondage and liberation do not really exist in the reality oneself, just as the appearance and disappearance of the snake are not in the robe which undergoes no change. The concepts of bondage and liberation are in the realm of non-apprehension. They do not exist in the self. When somebody superimposes the idea of the snake in the rope does not change. The appearance and disappearance of the delusory serpent will never change the rope. Similarly, the Atma, the Self, the infinite Brahma, is not affected by the stupid plurality that individualized egos in their hallucination have come to experience. Stanza 571. आवर्ते सदसत्वाभ्याम व्यक्तव्ये बंध मोक्षणे नावर्ति ब्रह्मणे काजितन्य भावा तनान्वर्तम यद सत्तैद्वैत हानि सयाद द्वैतम नो सहते श्रुति. When there is the presence or absence of wailing, bondage and liberation can be spoken of. There can be no wailing. For Brahma, as it is obvious, there being no second thing besides it. If there is, it will contradict the non-duality of Brahma. The scriptures will never suffer duality. Bondage lies in the non-apprehension of reality. When it is veiled, avarna, There is bondage having withdrawn from the equipments of tamoguna in the mind. As the agitations become less, satoguna becomes predominant. The mind becomes calmer. Calmer the mind, greater the contemplativeness. With a contemplative intellect, one apprehends reality and says, till now I did not know Brahma. Now I know what Brahma is. In fact, never can there be any wailing on Brahma. How can Brahma be wailed? With what will it be wailed? In Brahma there is a total absence of any otherness, anya bhava. In the self there is nothing but the self. How can there be avidya in vidya? Brahma is never veiled, so it can never be revealed. If you say there is veiling, it will be the destruction of the idea that Brahma is one without a second. The infinite can only be one. If it is conditioned even by 0.00001, it becomes finite. The infinite has no parts. Brahma is non-dual and the scriptures will brook no idea of duality. From the standpoint of the self, there is no anatman. Sankara talks from the highest standpoint when he is trying to talk to us of the nature of absolute Brahma. Stanza 572. Bandhascha mokshacha merse mudha buddhirgunam vastuni kalpyanti drigavritti meghkirtam yatha ravo yato dva sang chidetta daksharam. Bondage and liberation are attributes of the intellect which the foolish superimposes upon the reality, as the veiling of the eyes by clouds is superimposed upon the sun. In fact, this immutable reality is absolute knowledge, non-dual and unattached. The ideas of bondage and liberation are the conditionings of the intellect. It is the intellect that judges whether one is bound or liberated. They are nothing but intellectual concepts formed under the influence of delusion. Brahma, the reality, is never bound and hence can never be liberated. It has never been anything other than itself. You put your hands over your eyes and say that the whole world is darkened. If your vision was covered by a cloud, you say that the sun has come out again. In point of fact, the sun never went away nor came back. It always was. It is only the clouds which came and went. The clouds are neither in the sun nor in the eye, they are somewhere in between. How can you then say that Brahma, which is non-dual, unattached and absolute, has become the Jiva? It is impossible. From Om, when you look at the world, Om is not a place but a state of experience. All the declarations of the scriptures are mere blabberings, yet an illusory tiger of the dream can frighten the dreamer into wakefulness. Like the dream tiger, the scriptures, the guru, the sadhana can accomplish an awakening of a person. The scriptures can accomplish an awakening of a person. The scriptures, the teachers, and the philosophies are all meant for the egocentric PFT to turn his attention in the direction of the reality. When he realizes the truth, he finds that all else was a bold bluff. Stanza 573. अस्तिति परतयो यश्च यश्च नास्तिति वस्तुनि बुद्धेरेव गुणवेत्तौ नेतु नित्यस्य वस्तुनः. The concept that bondage is and the concept that it is not are with reference to the reality only attributes of the intellect. Never do they belong to Brahma, the eternal reality. यावनार्थे उद्पाने सर्वतः संप्लुदोके तावांस सर्वेषु वेदेषु ब्राह्मणस्य विजानतः. Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 stanza number 46. To the Brahma who has known the self, all the Vedas are of so much use as a reservoir is when there is a flood everywhere. There is and there is not. These are the two concepts of the intellect. They are intellectual judgments. Consciousness is the light in which you arrive at these conclusions. It is not touched by your judgments. You are conscious of these concepts. The illuminator can never be the illumined. The sun illumines the world, but the world of objects are not in the sun. As far as the consciousness is concerned, we cannot say that it exists or that it exists not, for these two are intellectual expressions arrived at by the rational faculty in us. In short, the language of the intellect can never express the nature of the absolute. The absolute can never have any qualities. That which has a quality is a substance, and all substances are finite and perishable. Therefore, the infinite must be that which has no qualities. We cannot define it in terms of its existence or non-existence. Stanza 574. असतौ माया किलर्पप्तो बंद मोक्षौ न चात्मनि निष्कले निष्क्रिये शांते निर्वद्ये निर्जने अद्वितीये परे तत्वे व्योम वद कल्पना कुतः. Therefore bondage and liberation are conjured up by Maya and are not in the Atman. As there can be no limitation regarding the infinite space, how can there be any limitation regarding the supreme reality which is devoid of parts, devoid of activity, serene, unimpeachable, untainted and non-dual? Hence bondage and liberation are the creations of the non-apprehension of reality. In the self they do not exist. How can there be any idea of limitation in that which is without parts, without activity, calm, unimpeachable, taintless, one without a second and all pervading like space? Stanza 575. Ne nirodho ne चोत्परित्रण बद्धो न च साधक न मुमुक्षर्न वै मुक्त इत्येषा परमार्थता. Neither is there birth nor death, neither a bound nor a struggling one, neither a seeker nor a liberated one. This is the ultimate truth. In reality, you are Brahma itself. There is nothing whatsoever other than Brahma. There is never any birth nor death. There is neither a seeker nor Brahma, nor one who has the burning desire for liberation, nor even one who is liberated. So then, even liberation is not an occasion for glorification. That is your real nature. In fact, you have not gained anything at all. All that you say is, what a fool I was. I never knew my own nature. There is nothing to be realized. you are that. This is the supreme truth at the moment of realization to the realized. Next topic is blessed disciple liberated. Stanza number 576. सकल निगम चूड़ा स्वांत सिद्धांत रूपम परमिदम अति गुह्यम दर्शितम ते मयाद अपगत कली दोषम कामनी मुक्त बुद्धि सब सुतवदसु कर्त्वा भाव्यत्वा मुमुक्षुम. Considering you to be a seeker after liberation, as one purged of the taints of this dark age, with mind free from desires, I have today revealed to you again and again, as I would to my own son, the supreme and profound secret, the innermost essence of Vedanta, the crest of the Vedas, the crest of the thoughts in the Vedas, the deepest purport of Upanishadic literature, the most secret knowledge has been given out to you by me that you may achieve purification from the impurities of Vasanas, Kali, and that you may make your intellect fully free from desires. Thus the Guru in Viveka Chudamani concludes his exposition addressing a student who had approached him in utter reverence and asked him the questions. Stanza 577. Iti srutva gururvakyam parasrayen kartanati saten samnujyato Yayu Nirmukt Bandhan. Hearing the words of the teacher, the disciple prostrated to him with reverence and obtaining his permission went his way freed from bondage. With the previous verse, the main thesis on Vedanta is concluded and Sankara is in the few concluding verses trying to wind up the drama of the teacher-taught relationship. In the opening verses, we had the enumeration of the qualities of a true student and were told of the nobility and grandeur of the teacher's personality. Then such a perfect student was made to surrender to an ideal teacher. When the student raised intellectual questions regarding his spiritual problems, the questions were exhaustively answered and the discourse has concluded in verse 576. In these few following verses, Sankara is pointing out the reactions upon the student on intelligently listening to and dynamically pursuing the wisdom of this textbook. Freed from all personality encumbrances, the student on full realization takes leave of his teacher and goes his way to revel in his own subjective experience ever after. To the student who has thus realized from his view, there is no difference between himself and the teacher. Both are experiences of the one infinite self. Yet the student prostrates at the feet of the teacher out of reverence. In spite of his realization, the student cannot overlook his sense of utter gratitude to the master who has awakened him from the dark, dreary misconception of the ego and introduced him into the amphitheater of the self. Stanza number 578. गुरुरेव सदानंद सिद्धौ निर्मवन मानस्य पावन वसुधाम सर्वाम विचार निरंतर. and the teacher, his mind immersed in the ocean of eternal bliss, forever wandered about, indeed blessing the whole world. When the disciple had gone, the Guru did not sit back with a sigh of relief. The Guru also, with his mind fully steeped in the ocean of eternal bliss, moved about, blessing the whole world, ever ready to explain and guide seekers who might approach him. Stanza The Glory of the Textbook. Stanza number 579 to last stanza of the book 581. Stanza number 579. इत्या आचार्यस्य शिष्यस्य संवाद आत्म लक्षणम निरूपितम मुमुक्षुणाम सुखबोधोपपत्तये. Thus, by means of a dialogue between the teacher and the disciple, the Atma has been indicated for the easy comprehension of seekers after liberation. Here in this verse we have Sankara's own declaration of the motive with which the poet philosopher had industriously labored through the 578 verses so far. The verse also indicates that Sankara had no philosophy of his own. It is only in recent times we find that every philosopher has got his own philosophy. In Viveka Chudamani, all that we have is a logical thought development of the entire theory of Vedanta, given out in a style and language most fit for the easy comprehension of even the dull-witted. With this aim in view, Sankara had woven this poetic tapestry most successfully indeed. Just as the great scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, is presented to the public in a conversational style, here we find Acharya Sankara employing a teacher-taught dialogue. The entire theme discussed is the nature of the self and how best the seeker can be tainted and helped to come to apprehend the truth. Stanza 580. Hit mid updesha mi driyanta विहित निरस्त समस्त चित्त दोषः भव सुख वीरता प्रशांत चित्तः श्रुति रसिका यतयो मुमुक्षयो ये. May those men appreciate this salutary teaching who are seekers after liberation, who have cleansed themselves of the taints of the mind by observing the prescribed methods, who have a distaste for worldly enjoyments, who have serene minds, and who take a delight in the scriptures. Listening to or reading Viveka Chudamani is no guarantee of understanding. Sankara could see that after reading the whole thing, some will surely say, all this is a big bluff. Hence he says, I have written this only for those who have the following 6 qualities. Number 1, those who have completely purged the impurities of the mind, vihita nirasta samasta chitta doshaha, by following the prescribed methods sama, dama, uparti, titiksha, shardha, samadhana. 2. Those who are averse to the pleasures of the world which are ever changing, bhava, sukha, virtaha. Third, those whose minds are quiet and calm because of the reduction of vasanas, parshanta chittaha. 4. Those who take delight in the study of the scriptures, that is, those who have the mental attitude to understand the Upanishads. Shruti Rasikaha. 5. Those who are putting forth the effort, those who are striving to realize what they have understood. Yata Yaha. 6. Those who have a burning desire for liberation, mumukstvaha. Such people, when they read Viveka Chudamani, will understand and appreciate it. Stanza number 581. संसारा धवनी ताप भानु किरण प्रोद भव दहव्या खिन्नाम जलाकाक्षया मुरुभूमि भ्रांतया प्रिभ्रमात्मा अत्यासन शुद्धाभ्युदि सुखकरम ब्रह्मा दवयम दृश्य तवेशा शंकर भारती विजते निर्वार संदायिनी. For those who are afflicted in this sansar by the burning pains caused by the scorching sun rays of the threefold sorrows, Adhyatmika, Adhidevika, Adhidevika and Adhibhutika, or and those who in delusion roam in a desert in search of water. For them here is the glorious message of Sankara pointing out the ocean of nectar, the non-dual Brahma within each easy reach in order to lead them to liberation. This wide and ample meter is generally employed by Sankara when he wants to pack a library of suggestive meanings into the band of a single verse. To a student who has seriously gone through the text, the terms employed in the verse need no commentary, and we are afraid that an exhaustive commentary would spoil the enchantment of its voiceless poetry. To those who are in vain searching in a desert, thirsty and exhausted, to them Sankara points out with his confident message an ocean of nectar, the Brahma, which is Satchit Ananda. The final result of such a spiritual self rediscovery is a total liberation of the mortal individuality from all its physical, mental, and intellectual entanglements. This is called liberation, self realization, or God realization. Hari Om. So, this is along with this video, the book is completed. Thank you. Namaskar.